Okay, we are now live, or at least we should be live. Let me just say, got it. This meeting is being live streamed. Super duper. So welcome to Thrive Tuesday, everyone. I've just got multiple screens open. I will say that now. So if I look slightly dazed and confused, that's why. That's because Mercury retrograde is playing havoc with technology this week. We've just had that brief chat. Everything seems to be dropping off, breaking. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So it's a belt and braces approach this morning. So I've got multiple screens, multiple windows, because we want to be able to see your comments and answer your questions. Because today I am joined by an amazing guest. This is Alison, and we are going to be touching on that, I suppose, what is still perceived as a somewhat taboo subject, which is microdosing. So welcome, Alison. How are you?
Thank you, Faye. I'm so happy to be having my morning coffee with you.
Good. I'm so excited you're here, because this has been something I've wanted to talk about actually in business for a long time, because, you know, using psychedelic substances in business is probably not what a lot of people perceive as a growth to success and personal growth. But, you know, there are so many benefits, aren't there, to using psychedelics. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and really how you came into this amazing field of work.
Sure. So on the topic of business and psychedelics, right off the top, I want to say that Steve Jobs said that LSD was one of the 1 or 2 most important things he did in his life.
Yeah.
And there are many creative and very business successful people who understand the power of psychedelics very, very, very well. And it's broadening. So who am I? My name's Alison Crosthwait. I live just outside Toronto on a little farm in Canada. And I started my career as a Wall Street trader, quantitative derivatives. I still can't even believe it. It doesn't even sound like me when I say that, but I did. Spent 15 years working very hard and being very stressed out. And from the outside, I looked great. You know, I had a house and money and a partner and all these things. And I was in the newspaper and people said, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. And on the inside, it was an absolute disaster, like disaster. In every way, terrible self-esteem, drinking way too much, nervous all the time. My partner refused to work. Like there were all kinds of things that were just like didn't feel like life was needing me, even though I was in theory financially very successful. And I sought out psychotherapy. And in my journey of seeking psychotherapy for myself, I came to be fascinated by what happens if we just listen to each other and if we take each other in at a deeper level. And I was blessed to have just an amazing therapist. And so I started studying therapy, and then my healing journey continued. Because yes, therapy is amazing. And there's also so much more, as you know. So a big loss actually propelled me forward into the world of psychedelics. And I won't go into the whole story, but it changed my life completely in terms of my nervous system and my ability to enjoy my life and be present. And then as a psychotherapist, I wanted to bring this to my clients, and I couldn't because it was out of the scope of practice. And so I stepped away from psychotherapy. And now I do both microdosing and macrodosing, focusing on magic mushrooms, which I know we'll talk about, in order to give people the most spectacular results that they can't even wrap their head around. And that's what juices me up.
I think it is. I think it's when, this is what I love. It's because it's so hard, isn't it, to have experiences outside of our normal range, you know, and our brain chemistry is a great thing, but, you know, shaman and, you know, druids, and we have traditionally used psychotropic substances to have spiritual experiences, to connect to something more than ourselves. And I think, you know, with modern pharmacy and, you know, everything that's been you know, the sort of belief system we have around why we shouldn't do that, why it's naughty or why it's bad, or, you know, it's an ideology that disenfranchises us from an incredible power within ourselves. And I think we
Exactly.
need to reclaim the use, personally, having had them for a number of occasions, the use of psychedelic substances,
Absolutely.
because it just blows your mind. I mean, you know me, I mean, I have quite weird experiences anyway because of how my brain works. So without those experiences, I cannot imagine how, oh, it would be like having my limbs removed, you know, how unconnected I would feel. So, you know, I'm all
Yes.
for people, you know, go for it, is what I say. So yeah, so it's so how did you, yeah, so you've explained how you got into this. So how, you say you do microdosing and macrodosing experiences. So how does that work? Do you have to work with people face to face, or can they, you know, if you're, you know, you're in Toronto, do they need to be in Toronto, or is there, or can you supervise people if they can do it online? How actually in practice
Yes.
does this work so that people can feel safe? Because
Yes.
I imagine feeling unsafe, you know, and I know it was for me when I first tried them, that feeling of, oh my God, you know, I'm stepping into the unknown. You need to know that
Totally.
somebody is there holding your hand, that you are safe and held. And that, I think that is something, you know, people need to be reassured about.
1,000%. And because they've been disenfranchised, we've got people having all these experiences by themselves or for recreational. And so we don't have a culture of practice, right?
Yes,
And this is a spiritual practice, just like you said, for
absolutely.
thousands of years, particularly women have carried these medicines, held ceremonies, held sacred space. Let's talk about microdosing in particular, because you and I are across the oceans. And I hold a field for people all around the world who do microdosing online. And this is how it works, is you find, each person finds their own medicine in their own place, and that's its own magical journey. And what we're talking about when we're talking about microdosing is we're talking about microdosing psilocybin, which is a type of hallucinogenic mushroom.
Mm.
It's found in hallucinogenic mushrooms and it's grown naturally and indigenously in many, many climates in the world, very sustainable, easily grown. And you're taking a sub-perceptual amount for a certain time period. I like 8 weeks. According to a certain protocol, I like twice a week. And so you have a structure and you're setting an intention and you're saying, okay, I have a client who wants to turn her wounds into wisdom. She's going through a big relationship transition. So she sets out on this journey to encounter herself. And what I do and what a guide does is offer you the held space and the tools and the mirroring to say, no, nothing's going wrong. This is exactly what you wanted. Your wounds are turning into wisdom, because sometimes on the journey, as we know, you encounter unexpected things. And it's like, this shouldn't be here. Just like you said with Mercury retrograde, if we fight it, we're in hell. But if we go, oh, it's Mercury retrograde, I'm on a journey, and I trust we can take Mercury retrograde and get the learnings from it, which is that
Yes.
we're not our phones, right? There's so many learnings. So this is the journey that I take people on with the medicine.
I think that's really useful. I think because what we have largely in culture, isn't it? We have a culture of substance abuse. That's
Yes.
escapism and avoidance and disaster avoidance. You know, my life is falling apart. I'm going to drink myself under the table. I'm going to just sit here smoking pot to escape the reality of my life, that I've got this awful job or this, and actually there are certain forms of substance abuse that are more feminine, aren't they? So alcohol is more the women. And I particularly, I know in cultures it differs, doesn't it? But sort of more drugs is seen as, I suppose, more of a masculine trope. And women who do that have really fallen off the wagon. They're not women anymore. They're just you know, and I think, but there is, you know, and it surprised me when I started studying Druidry and I started having to go to these meetings where we would have these experiences and we would smoke and we would be in a circle, that actually how feminine this experience is and was traditionally, that it was led by women as a hidden history, or rather I would say a removed and obliterated history, like so
That's
many
right.
of women's practices that have been taken away from us. I mean, I started getting into this particularly, you know, as recover from trauma that was particularly visited upon me, shall we say, because I was a woman. So I used this medicine to get over it. But I mean, my first experience of magic mushrooms was quite young by accident when I ate one. That's a whole other story. But yeah, so I think it's important to reclaim that actually, you know, you're not doing this as some kind of avoidance or to block things out. You're doing this with a clear intention that you have an issue. You are looking for a resolution, and you understand that there is a process to go from I'm immersed in the problem, but I have to come to arriving at a solution. And this is what it takes you through, is that journey. So it's not like I'm just going to sit here, have a spliff, and then everything's going to be all right in 12 hours. It's not, it's a process that we go through.
That's
So
right.
I think that's a very valid point that you're making. And I just want to reiterate that
I'm
you're
so
not
glad.
just sitting there getting high as a kite and pretending everything is okay, because that's just spiritual bypassing again, isn't it? We're just avoiding.
1000%.
Yeah.
1000%.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say as well about finding your own medicine. Yeah, and it's how you find it and where it is located or where you can source it from is always an interesting journey, isn't it, when you start this, or you're lucky enough to know where it grows in the wild and things like that. So yeah. So what have you got, any sort of like I suppose the thing I'm thinking about is people must come to you, as I say, people must worry about going on this journey for things like, as I say, you know, am I going to become addicted to it? What happens if I start taking it and I find it's that I need it too much, that I can't, you know, do without it? What kind of, how can you reassure them, I suppose, that that's not going to happen with how we work with it?
Sure. So physiologically, there is no evidence of addictive properties. So with hallucinogenic mushrooms. So that's the first piece. Really important. But as we know, we can be addicted to anything. Psychologically, we can be addicted. Yeah. And honestly, this is a big part of my work with clients, because we are so conditioned to take pills for symptom relief or to take pills to escape. And I'm constantly reframing it and constantly helping people go deep into the root of the feelings the medicine is bringing up. So watching our language, you know, not looking to feel effects, but to be with our process and be curious about what the medicine is bringing us. This is an important reframe. And every time I hear someone saying, oh, I felt high, I ask them to describe it in a way that is in the context of their healing journey, not drugs. Finally, the way that I work with it, and strongly recommend people work with it, is they take an 8-week microdosing cycle, then you take a minimum of a 2-week break.
Yeah.
And the reason for this is to know that it's in you. The medicine is actually opening the neuroplasticity in the brain, allowing you to expand, to feel more, to see more, to change your patterns. And then you will be different at the end of the journey. You don't need it. And you need that space to say, oh, look at me now. So we're tracking, we're setting intentions, we're comparing, and we're saying, okay, so now you've been on this grand adventure and now you're home. What's next for you? It's like planning the next vacation, but you do have to come home. And so with that kind of a structure and with the accountability of a group and those types of things, it keeps it in this sacred tradition that you're talking about, which I deeply in my bones believe in. It keeps it in that kind of energy field.
Yeah, it has to, I think, because otherwise it's it would go under. But I think, like you say, it's really important to see that it is not a cure, like you say. It's not something we're going to take, and it is the lubricant, isn't it, to opening those doors in your mind, to opening those parts of yourself that life and trauma and everything, and the way we have to live, the hustle, the go culture, shuts down so much of that creative, imaginative, inspired part of ourselves that is the doorway to our soul. And it just get all these locks and bolts all over it. And these substances are just a way of effortlessly well, I don't say effortlessly, but they're the lubricant to making those locks that we can slide the bolts back and we can open these doors. Because if we try and do it without these things, we are constantly pulling against rusty blocks, and we're doing all the affirmations and we're meditating, but it's not enough, because it doesn't alter the brain chemistry, does it? Because what we have to have is a distinct alteration in the like you say, the neuroplasticity. And I know from having these experiences that, that, for instance, like, just as an aside, I've had experiences of using these drugs to have these experiences. I've also used like earth medicine itself, like electromagnetic fields at geological fault sites and sacred sites. What they do is increase the levels of pinoline and then DMT in the brain, which of course, you're taking a plant form of what is essentially DMT in the brain. So we have to have this difference in brain chemistry to have these experiences. But you can't do that. It doesn't induce that using any of the other soul tools we're given. Meditation, it just doesn't do it. So this is why I think we have this history of realizing that actually we need something. And I think it's a very bonding experience to know that we are using something like a plant, like magic mushrooms or ayahuasca, that is something that the earth has naturally created, that Mother Nature has given us to use. It's just for us to use it more responsibly. And talking about responsibility, I suppose one of the other things people must wonder about, is it legal to go around, hunting out magic mushrooms or ordering them online or wherever it is your journey may take you on to get these things. So I think, can you reassure people that, it is actually legal to take these things?
No, I can't.
In some countries it's not, is it?
That's right. And it's really important that we reckon with that, each of us individually. It is coming. I would say we're like 5 years behind where cannabis is in terms of psilocybin. Psilocybin will probably be the first. I want to say that it's really important to think about your sources very carefully, that this is sacred medicine. And if you happen to have access to someone who sells street drugs, I highly encourage you to be really discerning for your own safety about whether that's a place where you would purchase these medicines. There are many creative ways of getting them. Your journey there is your journey there. Yes. And the other thing I want to say is about the war on drugs and the criminalization of these substances. I could say a million things, but I will say this: drug law is racist, it is unscientific, and it is unjust. That doesn't mean it's not the law, but each of us has to choose our relationship to it. And people, different demographics get to make different choices more easily or more difficultly. We all have a discernment process to do in this.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand, like you say, that there is a classification on substances, isn't there? Like alcohol is one of the most addictive and damaging substances you can have. Exactly. Yeah, it's legal. It's available everywhere. It's rammed down our throats, same as smoking. Right. It's legal, extremely harmful, extremely addictive, but it's just certain things are classed as out of limits for us. For a variety of reasons, shall we say? One probably least of all, on high on the agenda is empowerment. We can't have people empowering themselves. that would oh no, we can't have that, particularly not women.
Not women. No,
not women. No. This is a women's tool, not women. They must not, they mustn't, God forbid, they should learn that actually use these things around childbirth, and all the kind of things that actually it was used for. So, there's a lot in this. I learned forage. I went on a foraging course, particularly to learn all about different fungi, because I wanted to do, forage and cook food. And I told them I wanted to be able to clearly identify the different sorts of mushroom that were edible and inedible. That's a clue for people who might be listening. So that there's various routes to finding these things. Fortunately, I grew up on a farm where they were rampant in the fields, so we knew what they were from a very young age. And but when you move to a different area, you just nonetheless, I still wanted to be sure.
Sure.
So yeah, so it is difficult. We have to be aware that there are boundaries that are socially enforced around some of this that we have to be mindful of. But it's our journey whether we decide to take that or not. So and the other thing I suppose people are probably worrying about is, is their level of ability to function, be productive. If they're on this journey for so many days, how is that going to affect their life, their relationships while they're on it? Is there a downside to this, or is there something they need to be mindful of?
So there are some contraindications, in particular, pregnant or breastfeeding. It's not a good idea. No research has been done, but it's not a good idea. And there's some other contraindications. I'll say this: the partners of my clients are always very happy.
Yeah, but a whole new spring in your step.
Exactly. Some of them, they're not on this journey. They might think it's a bit weird. They might be nervous at the beginning, but 1 or 2 weeks in, they're like, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. I don't care what you're doing, like, just do. So it has a wonderful impact. And when you're getting the dose right, and this is another part around women, is the dosing and the studying has generally been for men. So we're learning, when are women more sensitive in their cycle? What are the right doses? I'm pretty good intuitively, but still there is a learning process. And so you might have a day. I usually say your first day on a microdose, you just want to have a little room. And the effect might be like a 1 or 2 glasses of wine, but it won't feel like wine at all. But that level of intensity, it's like, okay, so I'm not going to drive. It might be as we're getting the dose right. But once you get the dose right, you don't even know. It's a background work on your brain, on your being, on your soul. Microdosing is background. You can work better, parent better, love better. It changes your being, and you meet the medicine.
Yeah, I think it makes you kind of more so when you get it right. You're more productive, you're more joyful, you're more focused, and everything kind of just flows. There's no all these sort of barriers that in emotions and thinking blocks, and it's just like you say, you just seem to glide through things, and it just becomes, oh, this is exciting, this is fun, and you just kind of go on this way of things falling. I mean, that's personally been my experience. Obviously, I can't speak.
I think that's really well described. The other way I describe it is when you hit a trigger, like partner does something you don't like, you have a little bit more perspective and feeling. So you have a chance to see that they're also trying, even though you're pissed off.
Yeah.
Like there is more room. And this is a wonderful thing because it gives you just that micro moment to go, okay, I'm not going to explode, or whatever it is that your usual thing. So you have more choice, more possibility, more perspective. It's lovely.
Yeah. It's not that you become slow. I think it's almost like your experience of time is just slightly more relaxed.
Yes.
So, there isn't this rush, there isn't this urgency and everything. You just like absorb, and you sort of processing. You don't look any different to the outside world, but somehow inside you're processing things at a more relaxed pace, and then you react. And it just brings, there's a fly coming into the room, sorry, into the camera. And it's just a more relaxed sensation about how you respond to things, rather than this knee-jerk or preconditioned reaction all the time. Like I say, it gives you that space to look at things a little bit differently. So yeah, it's an incredible journey. I'd say for anybody who wants to try it. I mean, I would love to hold microdosing retreats. Unfortunately, it's not legal in the UK as yet. But there you go.
One day, Faye.
One day, I would love to hold some microdosing retreats in Ireland as well, because I know a great place where they're just rampant and it's in the middle of nowhere. It's really good fun. But we can't go into that at the moment. That's a top secret location. So, but yeah, I would like to, or maybe we just ought to hold another retreat there and have some nice, gentle evening activities out in the woods.
That's exactly right. Meditation.
We're having some meditation in the forest. Yes. Yeah. For the select few who attend. Yeah, so I think I think if anybody wants to learn more, obviously we'll put Alison's contact details up. You can reach out for her. But what's been your most profound experience, or have you had a profound experience, or a client's most, or is it just the sort of sense of transformation? I don't talk about having a profound experience when they take it. I mean, the sort of the overarching, if they hadn't done it, their life wouldn't be, what it is now, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I couldn't sleep. I felt I had negative thoughts running 24/7.
Yeah.
I was tortured for no good reason other than past trauma.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not alone. And now a negative thought might come into my mind. It does. But it doesn't come into my body.
Yeah, I think that's
at a moment's notice, I have access to being. And that's precious. And I don't think we know what's possible. I know we don't. So if anybody feels the call, I just urge you to step forward.
Yeah, and it doesn't, even if it's just you try it once, and whatever, it's just, I think it's just worth trying. So I'm just looking at the comments. I'm just going to refresh all my pages to see if I can see any comments, any questions, because you may well have questions that we have not thought of or not addressed. So if you have, and you're joining us live, because I can see people are here live and I haven't really said hello, so I do apologize for that. It's too many screens and I bear a very little brain. So I can, I can only do so much at one time, and there's no point pretending I can do any more because it all goes wrong then. So, yeah, Mandy, true re-empowerment. Yes, it is. Oh, hello, Jill. Yes, it is a great tool for empowerment and having confidence in your own ability to deal with things and find solutions. And it's not as bad as you think. And it is just opens up, like I said, because of the neuroplasticity, it just opens up things in your brain, resources within yourself, I think, that you just don't normally have access to. And gets rid of all that mind trash, doesn't it, that we're constantly trying to step over to get things done. We've got all this baggage and litter all around every thought all the time, and it's very hard to make progress. And it's kind of like a big broom comes along and sweeps the path through it all. And then all of a sudden there's this clear route where we want to go. We go, oh, it's easy now, but it wasn't, 10 minutes ago. So yeah, so I missed the beginning due to tech, says June. Where is Alison located? You're in Toronto, aren't you?
I'm just outside Toronto.
Just inside
and I
Toronto.
do work online.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's worth exploring. So yeah, and obviously if you've got any questions you want to ask afterwards, you can put them in the comments, then I can make sure that Alison gets them, sees them, and we can.
For sure.
But I think, I would love to have more conversations about this, if I'm honest, because I think, it's so beneficial. Sorry, my cat's just decided to destroy something by my feet. I think it's so beneficial to acknowledge the fact that sometimes, we do need something to help us grow. That is not journaling and working with moon cycles. And I love all that kind of stuff, don't get me wrong. But there is, sometimes we do need a physical stimulus to change our brain. And it's, it's otherwise we're trying to operate a muscle that we haven't got the full control of. Totally. And I think that I would love to have this, have more conversations and bring you back in again, or let's go on LinkedIn and talk to the business people all about it.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, because we can't underestimate the amount of trauma we're carrying.
No, I know for me it was trauma. I mean, my first experience, I have to be honest, of magic mushrooms was quite young. And I kind of left it then for a long time. It was just something that we, didn't really, and it was only when I went into sort of training as in the Druidry and shamanism with this women's group, and we were in this circle with the talking stick, and then out came the mushrooms, and I was like, okay, and I mean, we were prepared, but I wasn't really sure. But it was particularly about releasing trauma that I wanted to release, and it was an incredibly profound experience. And I don't think it would have been profound if we hadn't had. There would have been talking, there would have been release. It was a safe space. It was all women, we were all held. But without that collective experience and without the mechanism for us to open up in a way that consciously we none of us could do, we just kept hitting this wall all the time. I think without that, we wouldn't have had the release and the freedom from those experiences so that we could just move on and leave them. And so many women are suffering from trauma. I mean, people in general, but women, I think women carry so much trauma from so much of their life about how we're socialized, treated, pathologized, dehumanized, you know, vilified if we step outside this nice little box of what woman is, you know. And it's like anybody who goes out of that mold is just, you know, gets the brunt of it, don't we?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it'd be lovely to talk to you. So I really so Tracy says, do we have to have a collective experience to do it individually? No, how Alison works is very different. So you can do it although you're in a program. Do you want to explain, Alison? Here's my answer for you. So Tracy's asked, do we have a collective experience or do it individually?
So I think you're also talking about the difference between micro and macro dosing. Macro dosing is a full trip, usually say 2 grams. I'm not suggesting anybody take 2 grams, but that would be an example. And you do want to have some, it can be collective or it can be supervision or facilitation for that. For the micro dosing, it's very small, it's sub-perceptual. And I have an 8-week program that supports you in creating the intention, understanding what protocol, when and how much and all of that, and then going on the journey. And we meet every week and we have a juicy group chat and there's tons of tools. And that you absolutely can do from anywhere in the world that you feel comfortable. There are some countries that I would not recommend, but I think in the UK, I definitely have clients in the UK. You can do it.
Yeah, well, we can work around the law in the UK. Some countries not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I say, it's like you say, unfortunately, it's the legal issue in many countries that you have to source. Jill has just asked, how does one acquire the mushrooms? Yeah, that has to be your own journey at the moment. But it is possible, and there are ways and means of doing that, which I'm sure.
And I do advise.
Yes, I'm sure Alison could offer some advice on how to go about that, as you say. So, yeah, so it's it's a unique experience, and I say, yes, I probably didn't make it clear. The macro dosing and micro dosing, as you say, are very different experiences. One is, you know, getting along each day and feeling much better, and the other one is a completely different experience, the macro dosing. So yeah, it's been really, I'm so glad people have joined us for the conversation. So thank you, Tracy and Jill and everybody else who has joined, because I can see there are people there, quite a few people. I've not said hello because say 2 screens, very, very little brain, can't do screen, and brain explodes. I'm like a rabbit in the headlights. So if I've not said hello, I'll answer your questions. We will get round to it, but I think I've gone through everybody. It's just nice to see people watching, actually. So I can understand if to start with people haven't chipped in with loads of questions, because it is a new subject. It's a bit of a taboo subject. And yeah, so if you're joining us, you know, halfway through, go back and watch it. And if, you know, we can continue this conversation, then I would very much like to do so. So I hope everybody watching has enjoyed that. I hope it's been a delight to speak to you, Alison. So thank you very, very much for coming. And I will put Alison's contact details up if anybody wants to reach out to her. I think we've already put them up, but I will put them up again if anybody wants to reach out to her too. So it's been a joy.
Thank you,
to have you and talk about this a little bit more openly, because yeah, it's a great tool and it has been denied people for far too long, I think.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for supporting the work.
You're welcome. All right. Okay, I will speak to you very soon then, Alison.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you very much for everybody for joining me. And yeah, I will speak to you all in the group very soon. Thank you then. Bye.